So, well, I can't see you anymore, so I'm going to just speak to the crowd. Thanks, Alex. Thanks for putting this on. It's nice to be able to speak to you again. And I guess what you wanted to know was, kind of how Bitcoin and cryptocurrency is thought of down here in Africa. It's a big continent. There's lots of reasons why people would want to use something like Bitcoin. So what I want to do is I want to just take you on, tell you a story, really, explain to you what I've been doing over the last few years, because I've also been involved with Bitcoin since 2011. I had a company before founding Centbee. I founded a company called Ban Ki-moon, and Ban Ki-moon was all about really a blockchain company. And what we were doing was we were trying to find out, how we can use Bitcoin, because at that stage it was just Bitcoin, how we can use it for all these other things other than money. And so I spent a lot of time working with banks and government, central banks, and other industries, other financial industries, and stock exchanges, even media companies and so on, trying to figure out what we can do with blockchain. And of course, over the years, there was so much hype around blockchain. But my first love was always Bitcoin. I've always liked the money aspect of it. And so what I've always intended to do was create a company like Centbee, where we try and make the money aspect of cryptocurrency or Bitcoin on blockchain a reality. There's obviously been a lot of wallets, a lot of merchant payment systems that have come around, and I've always thought that there was something lacking when it comes to Bitcoin. You always needed to have people who understood all the complexity of Bitcoin, how blocks work and confirmations and addresses and transactions and so on. And so I've always wanted Bitcoin to be something that everybody could use, not just people who are familiar with those concepts or technical people. And so Centbee was something that was always there that I wanted to do. What I'm going to do now is I'm going to tell you a bit about my background, because my background has a strong influence in why I decided to pursue Bitcoin back in the day. And now, 8 years later, have a company like Centbee. And I'm also going to tell you about what we are doing, because what we've been doing in terms of what Centbee has been projecting out there is just a kind of a small part of it, really. We are a company that really wants to make Bitcoin payments a reality. So we spend a lot of time with regulators, because I realized early on that, and this is why for the last at least 6 years I've been working very closely with regulators around Bitcoin. And Bitcoin is never going to work if it is looked at as this system that is outside of government or outside of regulators. When you think about the real world, of course, we have these ideals. We want, everybody, especially, if you're younger, and I'm not talking about 20s, in your 30s, even in your 40s, you want to change the world, and you generally look at the system and you see how many problems there are, and you want to then change that. And I'm like that. That's why I love Bitcoin so much, is because I felt like I could change the system. I could see how the system was wrong, and I wanted to take Bitcoin and change the system. And by changing it, I had that sort of idea, which all of us do, I guess, when you want to change the world, is that revolutionary ideal, where you want to try and get rid of the status quo and completely replace it with something new. And being somebody who was involved with business and so on, I realized that even though that's an ideal that we should appreciate and respect in people, it's very rare that a revolution comes and wipes everything old out and replaces it with something new. And when that does happen, it's often very disruptive. And Bitcoin was something that I think we're all beginning to realize now I guess if you thought about it long enough, is that it's not going to be a revolution like a coup that's going to completely wipe out all the old stuff and replace it with the new. It's going to be something that needs to be a lot more subtle than that. It needs to be something that is not going to wipe out the status quo, but that is going to be embraced by the status quo. And when I say the status quo, I mean the government structures, the regulatory structures that we have around us today. So the only way we can make this work, the only way we can get cryptocurrency, and when I say cryptocurrency, I'm a Bitcoin person. But not just a Bitcoin maximalist. I'm a Bitcoin purist. So I like the original protocol. I think the original protocol is something worth fighting for. I think that the only way we're going to get that adopted and used throughout the world is if we get the regulators and governments and industry to adopt it. Now, I know that sounds, if you are a person who likes the anarchistic side of things, if you are somebody who, like Roger Ver, I'm sure if you know cryptocurrency, you know Roger Ver. He is an anarchist. He hates government, and he wants to get rid of government. That is something that an ideal that he goes for, but that's not going to be realistic. As hard as he fights, he's going to find resistance. And no matter how decentralized Bitcoin is, if he wants Bitcoin to change the world, the only way he's going to get to change it is if the people that he despises most, governments and so on, actually get on board. And that's a belief that I've had since the beginning. And that is what is driving me in creating StBe and the work we're doing with our regulators. I spend a huge amount of time inside central banks and tax authorities, explaining to them that Bitcoin is their best friend. It is something that is transparent. It is something that's going to help them when it comes to auditing businesses and individuals. It's going to help them when it comes to tax collection. Because if they can embrace it and they can allow businesses like StBe to exist, it means that more and more people are going to use Bitcoin. And if more and more people use Bitcoin, we will eventually change the world through Bitcoin. So that's the approach I'm taking. And I'm going to now switch to my slides because I'm going to now tell you a story about what we've been doing. And then I'll touch a little bit on StBe itself, where StBe is going. So if you have StBe, if you don't have StBe, by the way, I don't know how many people are in the room, but if you don't have StBe right now, please download it, and I will even right now send you guys some Bitcoin, and then you can try StBe out and see how it feels. So if you've never owned Bitcoin before, and StBe is a Bitcoin SV, which is Satoshi's vision, which is the original Bitcoin protocol. I'm quite happy to send you guys some Bitcoin and you can play around with it. So let me quickly now switch over to share screen. And then I'm going to start the journey. But if there are any questions before we begin, I'm happy to answer them. Or if you like, I can continue. Yes? That's right. If you go to the App Store right now on your phone, and you type in StBe, you're going to see it's a Bitcoin wallet. And no, well, you can do it while I carry on. You do it while we chat, and then once I'm done here, then you can show me your QR code or something, and I'll send you some Bitcoin. I'll show you how easy it is to accept. Okay, so is there anything else? Can I continue? Yes, I'm the CEO and founder of StBe, the company. And yes, I mean, up until I've built it, but I do have a team now, and so I have a team now who are all supporting and building out StBe and all the products that we are creating, which I will talk about a bit now. You're welcome. So okay, so this story, for me, and I think everybody, you've all seen this note. This is from Zimbabwe. I'm actually from Zimbabwe myself. I'm Zimbabwean. So I remember very clearly when Bitcoin, when the Zimbabwe dollar went to nothing, when people were spending huge amounts of money, $100 billion on some eggs. And it was during that time that I became aware and started thinking about money and started thinking about where money comes from. who issues it, what gives it value, how is it possible that a government can create these pieces of paper that can eventually go to nothing. And it was at this point when I really started being concerned and worried about the financial system, the global financial system that we have today, which is called fiat currency. Fiat is just means that governments create money. In the olden days, we used to have gold as money, and banks would hold gold and give you a certificate. That is what gold-backed currency is. Now that we have paper. And when I heard about Bitcoin in 2011, it was just clear to me that this was potentially something that could change money and take it back to what used to be a gold kind of standard, a sound money system. And that's when I realized that I was an Austrian economist. And that is the school of, if you're interested in understanding how economies work, economics is a very interesting thing. There are two systems today, well, major systems apart from communism and so on. Marxism. If you think about financial economics, we have Keynesians who believe that fiat currency is good, and we have the Austrians who think that gold money is good. And I'm certainly on that gold money thing. And if you are a person who likes Bitcoin or is interested in a sound money system, then that's something that will make you interested about Bitcoin. So in Africa, now this is something that's very interesting about Africa, is that mobile money is used everywhere. So mobile money is not bank money. What happens is mobile operators like Vodafone and so on, or at least the African versions of that, one in Kenya is very famous called Safaricom. What people were doing is that they were trading airtime minutes with each other as currency. So what would happen is they would say, I want to buy something for an amount, let's say $1. And the retailer or the merchant would say, all right, give me $1 of airtime, because I know that if somebody wants to come into the store, I can sell them that airtime for $1. So what happened was more and more people started using mobile airtime credits as currency. And then what the mobile telco, the operators did was they said, all right, what we'll do is we won't do airtime anymore. We'll actually create a currency unit on mobile phones, and people will then be able to use that as money. And so there are two very famous big companies in Africa that do mobile money. One is M-Pesa, and the other one is EcoCash. And it's a financial system that operates outside of the banking networks. So you can earn your salary, you can pay your bills, you can pay for your groceries, you can pay your friends, you can do whatever you like with mobile money credits. So this is now, in fact, in Zimbabwe, more than 95% of the transactions in the country go through mobile money. They don't even go through the banking system. And so people in Africa are very used to using mobile money payments, and mobile money that's not linked or that isn't really represented as a fiat currency unit, like a central bank currency. So Africans are very familiar with this concept of, I've got money on my mobile. It's not a bank money, it's mobile money. And so when it comes to something like Bitcoin, it's not a very big jump to go from all the money that they use already on their mobile phones to Bitcoin. And Bitcoin is very obviously better because Bitcoin is global. With M-Pesa, you can't send money to your relative in the next country. In South Africa, which is where I live now, a lot of Zimbabweans come down here, and every month they send a little bit of money home to their family in Zimbabwe, and they can't use M-Pesa to do that. What they have to do is they have to go through all sorts of funny channels. The formal channels will be companies like Western Union, and those companies charge about 15 to 20%. The most used way of sending money cross-border from all these millions of Zimbabweans that live in South Africa is what they do is they put money in envelopes. They give it to a minibus taxi. A minibus taxi is like a van taxi, and those are big in Africa. You know, these vans that, in fact, you can see one in the background there, although that's a bigger van. You get the mini vans. And what they do is they go to the driver and then say, please, can you drive to my wife or my mother in this town? Take this envelope to her. And so the taxi driver will say, okay, fine, but then you have to pay me, 20% of the value. And also what happens is, so now these taxi drivers have big boxes and suitcases full of money. They get to the border, and then very often the money gets found and confiscated. And so it's a very risky way of sending money cross-border. But Africans throughout the continent, and there's a lot of countries in Africa, people are constantly sending money throughout the continent and having to use these informal channels, and it's very expensive and very unsafe. So even though they're used to using mobile money, they have the same restrictions that you would if you were in a bank. They can't use mobile money to cross-border. So Bitcoin, being a global currency with no restrictions, is just something that is now something that when they look at, they say, yes, that's fantastic. And also given Zimbabwe, if you look at Zimbabwe with the hyperinflation, which is happening again, by the way, Zimbabwe is again going through hyperinflation. So can you believe it? 10 years later, after the one in 2008, now it's happening again. So they are very mistrustful of their currencies. And so adopting something like Bitcoin for them is, even though Bitcoin has massive volatility, I mean, the price is up and down, that's a volatility they're willing to tolerate. So this is the reality of what it is down here in Africa. And I've been working to try and bring Bitcoin to people. Now, another interesting thing about mobile money is that we're starting to see more and more these QR codes. If you go into any restaurant, any bar, any retailer nowadays, you're going to be able to pay with your mobile phone. So we've got this perfect situation, and it reaches all levels. You can be a large retailer, or you can be a woman on the side of the road who is selling magazines, and you can see that she's got a QR code there. SnapScan is a large company. They're doing quite well here. And you even get guys who look after your car on the side of the road. If you park your car, then what they'll do is they'll look after your car, make sure nobody messes with your car, and you pay them less than $1. But you can pay. You can scan their QR code. So QR codes, mobile money payments, mistrust in currency. It's this recipe that is going to make Bitcoin and whatever other cryptocurrency. But of course, I'm a Bitcoin person, so Bitcoin become massive in Africa. And I'm so glad that I live in Africa, because I've been exposed to this, and being somebody who is loves Bitcoin, I've got the best possible continent in the world that will accept it. So it's very a wonderful place if you are a Bitcoin entrepreneur here, because I can just see problems everywhere and solutions for Bitcoin. If you come from Europe, I'm sure it's like this, or if you're in the US or even in Asia, Japan and China, they've got mobile money payments. They've got banks and credit cards and so on, and everything works fine, and so they're happy. But Africa is not like that. We've got huge money problems, and Bitcoin is there to solve it. So, what is the work that I've been doing along with Centbee? I'm going to leave Centbee out for a bit. One of the things that I was doing before I started Centbee, I was still building Ban Ki-moon, the blockchain company, is we have a lot of problem when it comes to energy. So there are a lot of rural communities throughout Africa, and electricity is something that it obviously is important. But when it comes to making payments for electricity, what we have a lot here is what's called prepaid electricity. So that means you go and buy electricity prepaid like you would airtime, and then you use the electricity, and then when you're finished, your meter is dead, and then you have to go buy more electricity. So there was a lot of problems that I could see, because I was in the industry. I was building payment systems for smart grids and electrical systems like this, and that was in 2010. And then in 2011, that's when I discovered Bitcoin, and I realized Bitcoin is a wonderful tool for people to be able to buy electricity because now they don't have to travel to a vendor far away, which is expensive. They have to travel, and also vendors always increase the cost of electricity. So I thought, well, wouldn't it be great if we could build a Bitcoin payment system for people to be able to buy their electricity? So what I did was I built a system which was basically just a Bitcoin payment gateway. What it did was you could pay Bitcoin to an address on the meter. It would calculate a tariff, find out how many kilowatt hours were required, and then it would push those energy units or kilowatt hours to the meter, and then the person would have electricity. And so you could do this all with Bitcoin. And so this was the first time this was done, and this was all exciting for me because I thought, great, here is a use case now, where people are going to be able to use Bitcoin, and it will drive adoption for Bitcoin, and this will become something that makes Bitcoin useful to people. Unfortunately, in those days, Bitcoin, the fees started getting really high. The confirmations were a problem. Then they started doing silly things like what was called replace by fee, which is a big problem with BTC right now, Bitcoin BTC or Bitcoin Core, where you can't trust a payment until it's been confirmed. So this became a problem. And I started looking at other cryptocurrencies. But unfortunately, no cryptocurrency was useful until Bitcoin Cash came along. And Bitcoin Cash meant that we could have bigger blocks, and we could trust what are called zero confirmation transactions or instant transactions. So I built a whole lot of other things. I started looking at the smart contracts, and so we could have these decentralized payment gateway systems where what would happen is you would pay Bitcoin to a smart contract. That contract would be analyzed, find out what the tariff is, calculate the kilowatt hours, and then pay the meter as well. So here again was where I was trying to now build a blockchain-based smart contract energy metering systems, and that was fun. But what was really cool was that you could start now thinking of all sorts of interesting use cases for this. And the first use case I applied it to was public utilities, and where you can have, if you think of a public utility, for example, if you look at the street outside your house, there are street lights, and those lights go on, and there's a public body, a municipality or a council that is paying those to have those street lights on. And what you do every month is you pay something to the council, some tax or something, and they then can fund the energy that is being put into those streetlights. But it's a very inefficient system where very often the council is paying for, in this particular example I'm giving you with the streetlights, neighborhoods maybe that don't need it, or there's nobody there or whatever. So it's a very inefficient system. So by using these smart contract payment platforms, what I did was I created these smart contracts where what you could do is you could now have street lights that were outside, and if somebody wanted to have that street light on, they could send small amounts of Bitcoin to that light directly and pay to have it on. Which meant that if you really wanted to have a street light outside your house, you could pay small amounts of money to that lamp, that individual lamp, and power it for your own use and for your own needs. And that meant the council didn't have to now start pumping energy into those streetlights, whether they were required or not. You could pay as you go or pay as you require. And you can start imagining now this idea for all sorts of things, for all sorts of utilities that are inefficiently used. Where let's say, I was in the energy industry, so I was thinking in terms of energy. But you could start thinking about other use cases where maybe you want to pay for something, and you're willing to pay something small, like something on the order of a few cents for a particular thing. It's very difficult to do it with any other payment system, but Bitcoin allows you to do it because, remember, Bitcoin is cash. It's not a credit card payment that now needs to be verified and so on. If you receive a Bitcoin payment, you've received a Bitcoin payment. If you receive a credit card payment, months later, that payment can be charged back or revoked. And if you've delivered a service, you don't get your money, you lose. So Bitcoin can easily fund these things without there having to be the issue of credit card fraud or payment fraud. So this is the stuff that I was building, prior to building Centbee. And actually, we are using some of this technology within Centbee, because it's not released in Centbee right now, but we are going to be doing exactly the same thing, where you can now pay for things like this with Centbee, and you'll start seeing these value-added services coming along once Centbee is much more stable, and works a bit better. We're focusing on the fundamentals right now. So now what's great is that you don't need to be in the location wherever you are, because remember, Bitcoin is global. You can be anywhere you like, and you can fund these types of things. You can turn the lights on in any country wherever you are by sending a Bitcoin payment. And when I was doing this, I was thinking of all these different ideas around this, and obviously from an energy point of view, I was thinking, well, what other ways could we use this idea? And you can think of, maybe if you're a student and you're in another country, and your parents are paying for your rent and so on. Maybe you have a bill to pay, and normally what would happen is your parents would send you money. It would take some days, and there would be costs. Well, your parents can now just, in this example, send a Bitcoin payment directly to a meter, let's say, and turn your lights on. But what I was also thinking about this, the idea that I had was that, well, what you could do now, if you were somebody who was concerned about the world and wanted to make the world a better place, you can imagine now there's a little school somewhere in Africa, and they don't have funding, and maybe what you can do is, instead of sending money to an organization, a charity organization, who will then distribute the funds in the way that they think, some of it will go to administration costs, some of it will go to something else, some of it will get stolen. Well, what you can do now is you can donate directly to a cause you believe in without worrying about a middleman that's taking fees. So in thinking about this, I decided to actually do this. And this is now going to be a story about a project that I created called Usizo, which there's some more information you can go to and look at if you like. But this is a story now that involves a university called MIT in Boston, and I'm sure you've heard of it, and another little school in my city, well, just outside of my city, called Emoeni. It's in a poor community, and what we did was this little school is like every other little school. They have a very small budget from the government, and what they do is they take that budget to pay for things like maintenance and teacher salaries and all sorts of things. And what I did was I went to the school and I installed a smart meter there, and I hooked it up to my Bitcoin payment system. And what we decided to do was do a demonstration. And I had a friend of mine who has a company in Austria called Grid Singularity, which is a very interesting company, Grid Singularity. His name's Ewald Hess, or Ed Hesse. And I was telling him about this system, and he said that he was giving a talk at MIT about his company, which is a blockchain energy company. Why don't we do a demo? And so what I did was I went to the school. He was doing his presentation at MIT. I'm not sure what time it was there, but where I was in South Africa, it was about 3:00 in the morning. And what we did was the meter had no electricity on it, and we were going to show people at the MIT conference and Ed was going to send a Bitcoin to the meter, and it was going to load the meter with electricity. And so what happened was the teachers and parents were very excited to see this, and so they all came down to the school at 3:00 in the morning. And Ed then I Skyped into the conference. And what Ed did was he sent the money, and the lights went on, and all the teachers were excited, all the parents were excited. Some of them are in their pajamas, and it just showed how powerful this is. Being able to send a Bitcoin and instantly turning on the lights in a different country. And it just showed the impact of why Bitcoin is so cool. This ability to send money at very low cost. Or when I talk about Bitcoin nowadays, I talk about the original Bitcoin. So that's Bitcoin SV. And it just shows you how quick, how cheap, and how effective it is to send money from one country to another and to actually make a direct impact. And by the way, if you want to see, let me just go back a bit here. If you want to see more information about this or hear more information about this, just go onto Google and type TEDx Gamaroff, and you'll see a talk I gave at TEDx, which talks more about the story. So you'll get I mean, everything I'm telling you now is basically in the talk. It's only 10 minutes long, so you can see more about this story that I gave. But what's cool is that now you can actually, when it comes to charity, I'm now specifically talking about charities, organizations out there, there's something called long tail. And this was popularized in a book by Chris Anderson. And what he talks about is that there are very few products that have a large amount of customers. So if you think about a social network, that if most users are on Facebook, less users are on another social network, and then less and less and less and less. Other products out there, like, I don't know, toothpaste. Colgate is a big brand, and most people use Colgate, but there are a number of other toothpaste brands, and less and less people use those toothpaste brands. So in charity, it's the same. There are a few number of causes that, or at least a few number of charities that get most of the support, and then there are lots of charities or causes out there that get very little support. And you could now, let's say there's somebody out there that $1 would make a difference to. You can't really reach that person because making a $1 payment is a very expensive, complicated affair. But again, with Bitcoin, you can make small transactions directly to people and make a difference in their lives. And so even though, for me, Bitcoin, I like the idea that Bitcoin can change the world. And I like this idea that even from a charitable perspective, Bitcoin has the ability to make a huge impact. And so this has been something that's been very close to my heart, and something that I really want to keep encouraging and definitely want to bring out in this idea of Bitcoin. Obviously, most people look at crypto and they think, okay, this is a great way to protect myself from hyperinflation or government, or I can make a lot of money, and I hate that. I think that kind of turns Bitcoin into a greedy thing rather than into a charitable thing. And so I always try, whenever I give my talks, to sort of give us this perspective. So chat now. Let me talk about StBe now. If you want to see more about StBe and our strategy and what's going on, I gave a talk. Alex, you were there in London, and I focused on StBe and what we're doing. So I encourage you, if you want to know more about what we're doing with StBe, go look at that talk. You can just type into YouTube CoinGeek StBe or CoinGeek Gamaroff, and then you'll see my London talk. There's another one from Tokyo, but the London one I think is more specific around StBe. And but what I want to do is I want to focus on one of our products within StBe, which is called ChatPay. And this is now something that isn't in StBe right now. But when if you download StBe now, you'll get basically StBe without this. But I want to tell you about what we're doing now with StBe. StBe is contact driven, so when you install it, you're going to see it asks for your mobile number. Don't be afraid of that. If you think about other social networks, they ask for your mobile number, like WhatsApp or Telegram or even Instagram, and those kinds of social networks want your mobile number. And the reason for that is because we link to your contacts, so we need to make sure that you own that mobile number. And so when you put in your mobile number, it confirms that you own it by sending you a one-time PIN. But once you've gotten through that process, anybody that is in your phone book that has StBe, and if you have installed StBe now, maybe you can check. Maybe you know somebody in your phone book that does have StBe already. They're going to come up. And then from that point, you can now go and easily pay them without knowing their Bitcoin address and so on. So we really want to make Bitcoin StBe a social network app. We like social networks. We think social networks are strong and powerful, and we want StBe to be a social network. And so we link to your contacts. Now there are other wallets out there. A very good one is called Handcash. They don't use mobile numbers. They use the handle idea. So you can choose a handle, and you can pay to handles. That's very cool, because then you don't need to know somebody's mobile number to pay them. But we use mobile numbers. And ChatPay is a product that was always intending to be in Centbee. If you see Centbee's logo, it's a chat bubble, because we always wanted you to use chat to be able to send money to your friends. And this is how it works. So when this comes out, this is what's going to happen. You'll be able to chat to somebody. So in this case, we've got KG speaking to Michelle, and she says, "Please, can you send me $10?" And KG will then say, "Okay, cool, no problem." And what he will do now is he's got $15, so he will then type in the word "send," and it then recognizes the word "send" as a function. And it'll then prompt him, okay, how much do you want to send? He's going to send $10. And as soon as he just types in $10, boom, the money is sent. So this is now a way that you can now, without having to know about addresses and all that sort of thing, send money in chat. And this is something that Centbee has always, this is the direction we've always been going in. And you're going to see this, we're going to start putting our beta out of this function maybe towards end of February, perhaps. We're still in testing. If you download Centbee now, you're going to see it's different. When you select a contact, it just has an input where you put money in and so on. And like I said, if you've downloaded Centbee right now, I'm happy to send you some Bitcoin and you can see how it works. Now, let me quickly get through this. One of the most difficult things right now is how to get Bitcoin. You might be sitting there and saying, cool, I've got Centbee and I want Bitcoin. Where do I get it from? Now, the only place really you can get it nowadays is by registering on an online exchange. And by doing that, you're going to have to go through some KYC. You're going to have to upload your ID. You're then going to have to EFT money from your bank account into the exchange bank account. That's going to take some time. And then finally, you're going to have a balance on your exchange and you're going to be able to buy Bitcoin. And then you're going to have to understand how the exchange works. You're going to have to understand how, there's a marketplace and there's bids and there's asks and all sorts of stuff. And that's complicated. So sorry, was that a question? Okay, cool. How's the quality, by the way? Has the quality been okay? Good. That's correct, because Centbee is a Bitcoin SV or Satoshi Vision wallet only. Yes, so that is the original Bitcoin protocol. We only support the original Bitcoin protocol, even though on the exchanges, what happened was Bitcoin had the ticker BTC, and then when Bitcoin Cash split away, Bitcoin Cash was then the original protocol, and it changed its ticker to BCH, and BTC then changed Bitcoin to include SegWit and replaced by Fiat and so on. But in the perception is that BTC was the original, because it kept the same ticker as the original Bitcoin, BTC. So that everyone in the world, most people think that that's the original protocol, but it's not. BCH became the original protocol. But now even BCH has changed the protocol, and now the new ticker for the original protocol is BSV. But people don't see it that way. People think that BCH was a fork of Bitcoin, and then BSV was a fork of BCH. It's actually the other way around. Now, this is a complicated. You can go and investigate this yourself and check it out. But we only support the original protocol, which is now called BSV. Cool. Okay, so what we thought was, it's very hard to buy Bitcoin. So we know that it is possible to buy digital content with these vouchers. And if you've ever bought an iTunes gift card or a Google Play gift card or an Uber gift card or whatever it is, we felt like that's the best way for people to buy Bitcoin. So what we have is we've got a voucher product where you can go to a retailer, you can hand over your dollars or your euros or whatever it is. You will then get a voucher that you can scan into Centbee, and it will load Bitcoin onto your phone. And we think that that's going to be one of the ways that people can get into the system the easiest without having to worry about exchanges and so on. And we're very excited about rolling this out. We obviously now need to work with local voucher partners, so it's probably going to be a while before we, get to every country. But this might be an opportunity for one of you guys, to figure that out, and then you can sell vouchers in your own country, and we're happy to support that and give you all of the information that we've got and the thoughts around that. But this isn't a business opportunity, to create these vouchers, because they don't have to be Centbee vouchers. They can be your own vouchers. You can do that. Anyway, so another thing we've got is now I was talking a lot about Bitcoin being something that can really solve the problem of cross-border remittance. And in fact, for years, people have been saying that Bitcoin is going to be the best thing when it comes to cross-border remittance because it's so cheap and quick and global. So Centbee does this as well. If you have bought Bitcoin from a voucher, you can then go and take that Bitcoin that is now loaded onto your phone, and you can now go and send it to a relative in a different country. So on the left is South Africa. That's the South African flag. On the right is Zimbabwe. And by using Bitcoin, what we do is we convert it directly into mobile money and load it onto the phone of the recipient. And so then they have the ability to now use their mobile money to purchase things as normal. So we use Bitcoin as the rail to be able to send money, but we know that in other countries there are no payment systems and people don't use Bitcoin. So we convert Bitcoin. And what we're also doing right now is we are building a retail payment system. So you can now go and buy stuff with Bitcoin at the point of sale. And what we're doing is we are building out a whole lot of open source technologies and ideas and methodologies and so on that we can give to the community. Anybody can take this and go and provide merchant payments to their own merchants. We don't want to. This is not going to be proprietary. We're working with N-Chain to give this free to the community so that you, again, can take this technology and you can become a payment processor and you can earn fees by providing payments to your merchants. So this is going to be to enable the community around the world. So this is kind of, okay, this is just a little bit more. If you want to see more about this, this is just a breakdown on how payments work. It's a very high-level overview. If you want to see more about or hear more about this, you can go and see my CoinGeek Tokyo. Was it Tokyo or Hong Kong? I can't remember. I think it was Hong Kong. You can go and hear more about what we're doing in terms of merchant payments. But that's pretty much it. I think if there's any questions, I'm happy to answer them. I hope that was interesting. And if you have got Centbee, feel free to share the camera, and I will send you some Bitcoin right now. Who's keen? That's right. So if you go into Centbee, what you can do, there is a little option at the bottom here called Share Centbee, and that will tweet out Centbee. But also what you can do is in the Receive menu, there is this, which is your QR code. And what you can do is you can take a screenshot of that, and you can tweet it onto Twitter, and you can tag Centbee at Centbee and say, "Hey, I'm using Centbee. What an amazing app!" And then I'll make sure that somebody sends you some Bitcoin, and then you can see what it's like to have Bitcoin. Just go for it. Yeah, you should use Twitter. Twitter's great. I used to think Twitter was dumb, but it's actually a great way of getting very immediate thoughts and information from the world. It's like a live stream of what's going on, and if you follow people, specific people that you're interested in, or companies, it actually becomes a great way for you to be up to date, up to the minute with what somebody is thinking or what a company is saying. So I encourage you to use Twitter. It's an amazing tool. And I think once you start using it, you might become addicted. Twitter, it's a social network. That's correct. At Centbee. Yes, at Centbee. Hmm. Yes, I just put that up there. It's a new, fresh one, and that is a QR code that will go through to that school. So if you want to go and turn the lights on, sure, sure. Let me grab it quickly. Where is it? Where is it? Where is it? Where is it? Oh, comes on. I'm trying to. Oh, there we go. Okay, cool. There it is. Now, this is a bit different from the one that was in the TEDx talk itself, because I even put this up in the TEDx talk. That was an old BTC address, which is still valid, but I can't remember where that goes. So, yeah. Okay, let me see if I can scan. Are you using Centbee? Oh, okay, I see. All right, well, maybe it comes. Maybe the QR code is wrong. I haven't even tested it yet. Cool, you got it. My own Centbee wallet knows. I'll just shut it down. Anyway, yeah. So, anything else? No, I'm afraid not. It's proprietary. It's our business. I know that's another thing that Bitcoin is like. They like to have open source tech. You know, to be honest, we aren't really focused on Bitcoin people. We we are very interested in people who've never used Bitcoin before, and those people we have found they they don't have the same thoughts around privacy that Bitcoiners do. They just want a service that works. So we're focused on just providing value. That's our aim is to, if you want to use Bitcoin, Centbee, we're trying to just make it the most convenient. One thing we have found is that, and this was a myth that BTC types have been saying for years, which is again false. The whole idea of being your own bank. Have you ever heard that phrase before? Be your own bank. That is one of the great myths of Bitcoin, the great sort of bad ideas. Nobody wants to be their own bank. It's kind of like saying you can be your own dentist, or you can be your own, whatever it is. People want to be looked after. People want to be protected. If they forget their password, they want to be able to have you reset it for them. So even though, of course, there are people who are technical and understand these things and are very happy to have their own private keys, that's a very, very small segment of the world. Most people want you to look after them. And right now, Centbee, we don't own your keys. You own them. So if you lose your phone and you haven't backed up your key, which you should do if any of you have installed Bitcoin right now, Centbee right now, please go through the backup process when you're at home in your own private place. What you'll do is you'll write down your own 12 words, and then you will write down your PIN. And if you have your 12 words in your PIN, that's your key, and that's how you can bring back your money at any time. So StBe doesn't keep that. So we have no control over your money. We can't lock you out of your money or anything like that. But we have found our users don't want that. They don't want the responsibility. So what we will probably consider further down the line is actually becoming a custodial wallet. Well, having a choice. Either you keep your keys yourself, or you choose for StBe to look after them. And most of our users right now, and we've got a lot of users in countries like India and so on, they don't want to look after their keys. So I think what you'll find more and more in the future is that there are going to be more custodial businesses that act like banks. And remember, banks aren't just places to keep your money. Banks do things like give out loans, and so the banking function is not going to go away. That's always going to exist, and banks are probably going to use Bitcoin for that. So being your own bank only works for a very small minority of people on the planet. I don't know. I mean, I'm not sure how is it measured. So I'm not really sure. All I know is that the continent I live in certainly is, and that's an easy one. But I don't know. Is Bulgaria a developing country? What do you think? Cool. So South Africa is also like that. We kind of we're very different to the rest of the continent. We have a very advanced infrastructure. It's kind of like Hong Kong is to China. We're like South Africa is like the Hong Kong of Africa. Um, if you travel in Africa and then you come to South Africa, you'll feel like you're in Europe. Um, South Africa is kind of like a combination between the States, some European countries that I've seen, like Serbia, I guess, is one that I can think of. I haven't been to Bulgaria, but I don't know how different it is. So Serbia, sorry, there. Right. So South Africa is kind of like Serbia meets the States, meets England, meets Africa. It's got a lot of European influence here. Um, Obviously, if you're white in South Africa, you're European descent. And the two dominant European strains are English and Dutch. And although my grandparents came from Latvia, so but you can see how the Dutch English influence is very strong in South Africa, and also because of apartheid. Even though apartheid was bad and it was unfair and so on, the interesting thing about apartheid was that it meant that South Africa had the ability to rapidly grow in terms of economy and infrastructure compared to the rest of the continent. And so even though from a racial point of view, apartheid was very bad, it meant that South Africa grew very quickly to become an almost developed country. In fact, I think South Africa is very close to being a developed country, much more so than any other African continent. So it's a very interesting place, and it's a very wonderful place. If you're traveling, you'll have the best of the kind of African experience, but also the best of first world European, Western experience. So that's why I really like being here. I get to solve African problems, but live in a first world environment. So what you would do is there are companies, and I'm sure there are even companies in Bulgaria that are voucher companies. If you are, if you have ever bought a digital voucher at a retailer, that is being provided by some kind of a company that provides a voucher system to that retailer. Now, those voucher systems can be repurposed for anything, because all they do is they sell some kind of digital token. And that means you can now be a Bitcoin company that integrates into the voucher company and says every time somebody wants to buy Bitcoin from that retailer, when they hand over their euros, so let's say they hand over 10 euro, sell them a token that you get from us or from the Bitcoin company or Centbee, and then when we get the feedback from the voucher company that that token has been paid for with 10 euro, we can then issue some kind of digital product. So when somebody buys a Centbee voucher, what they're doing is they're buying a token that represents some amount of money. So let's just say 10 euro. So we now have basically sold a digital token for 10 euro. That's it. That's as complicated it is. And now the customer has a 10 euro credit with us. So when they redeem that token, so when they scan it into Centbee, we then say, okay, this customer has paid 10 euro for this token. Load 10 euro of Bitcoin onto their phone. So it's actually very easy. All you have to do is you find the voucher company that sells digital tokens. You then integrate into that voucher company and you say, sell my product for tokens. The voucher company doesn't care what you're selling. They don't care if it's Bitcoin or whatever. All they're selling is tokens. And they are making the transaction possible with the retailer. You then take that token and you do something with it. So you're going to have to build that technology. And that's all we've done. We have a voucher partner here. They sell tokens. We get a notification that a token has been sold. We get the amount. We, because they're scanning it into Centbee, we can then load the money directly, the Bitcoin directly onto the Centbee wallet. And that's all we do. So that's how simple it is. And if you find a voucher company, maybe you can do the same thing. You see, the nice thing about Bitcoin is that it's opened up a whole new world of services that can be provided. And if you are an entrepreneur, you can now do this. You know, everything I've been telling you about the remittance, the vouchers, the payment systems, those are all a universe of possibilities for entrepreneurs to now go and be opportunistic. You know, this is a whole world. It's kind of like the internet has just been born, and now we need Amazon, and we need Facebook, and we need Google. Those don't exist for Bitcoin. And so now you've got a whole wide open space to be able to provide value around Bitcoin. That's why Bitcoin is so wonderful. Bitcoin isn't something you buy and get rich on. Bitcoin is a new world of possibilities that you can now, as an entrepreneur, build. And we saw it with the internet. We saw how the internet was a protocol or a platform that allowed businesses to build on top of and provide value to people and earn money. Bitcoin is exactly the same. It's a platform that you could build a business on top of and be the next Facebook. Cool. Great. Well, thanks. It was a pleasure to meet you all, and nice to see you again, Alex. And I wish you guys the best of luck. Alrighty. Thanks, everyone. Bye.